Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Xyzal is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Xyzal keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all, take Xyzal. At night.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
They got Willa. They got my daughter. I need to find her.
From acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You can save that girl.
Today, experience what is being called the best movie of the year.
This is the end of the line. Not for you.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Chase Infinity.
Let's go! Here I am.
One battle after another. Now playing only in theaters. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R. Under 17 animated without parent.
You can't hide.
The Hilton sale is on. Now through September 29th, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Long weekends, last-minute getaways, holiday gatherings. There's a Hilton stay for all of them. More moments, more experiences, more destinations. Now 20% off for a limited time because it matters where you stay. Don't wait. Book by September 29th and save up to 20% at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton for the stay.
Welcome in. See some people already starting to join the live stream, and we are live. This is Garrett Chapman with the Falcons Podcast with your host, me, Garrett Chapman, right here for Falcons on SI. We had a big game coming up here on Sunday. Lots of eyes turning here to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, just as this Falcons team tries to get back on the right track. They desperately need to do so, sitting at 1-2 right now. Behind the Carolina Panthers by virtue of what we saw on the field last week. But then on top of that, you have a Commanders team that is really kicking off, just kind of kicking on all cylinders right now. They're just clicking. They're doing everything that they want to on offense. The defense is playing really well. They're winning games. I don't think that they've necessarily been the best team in any of their 3 weeks that they've played, but they've certainly been the best on the scoreboard, and that's really, at the end of the day, all that matters. But hopefully we'll be getting to a Victory Tuesday podcast next week, but we'll be talking a little bit more about this upcoming game with the Washington Commanders, where I haven't seen the line, actually. I need to go double check that line, but very excited to jump in here today. I've got my big questions that I have for the Atlanta Falcons just heading into this game. We'll get to that here in just a little bit, but if you have questions, if you have comments just in general about this team, what about things you want to see, maybe questions about things that I've seen up there at Flowery Branch or just based off of my conversations with the coaching staff or some of these players, feel free to drop those in the comments, and thank you so much. But give me a follow at GChapATL on Twitter. Stay fully up to date on everything that we have coming out here, Falcons on SI. So had a bunch of stories coming out. I had this piece on Michael Penix that I really appreciate a lot of people who've go check that out and put a lot of work into it, like 1,200 words or so, and it was a good time. And it wasn't necessarily the most fun thing to type up, but it was something that I feel like is very relevant. But make sure to like the podcast, make sure to subscribe, make sure to share it with your friends, kind of get some other Falcons fans in here. But as of today, on a Friday edition of the Falcons Podcast with Garrett Chapman, we're going to be jumping through some of these questions. But as these questions come in, as your questions come in, I'm going to try to get to some of these. I see some are starting to come in already. Dantes Jackson, my man right here. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you for jumping into the podcast. Here we go. Sam Klontz II on YouTube. He says, nice surprise win and everything is better. Commanders are seriously banged up too. Yes, that's absolutely right. We'll talk a little bit about that. That's going to get into some of my questions here for the Falcons heading into this game. AJ comes in and he says, if the Falcons lose to a Mariota-led Terry McLaurin-less, speaking of the injuries that this team is dealing with, Commanders team, the writing is on the wall for the staff and front office. Losing to Carolina and now this would be inexcusable. And we're going to get into some of that here on the show, just in general. I have some thoughts on that. And I think it's not necessarily as doom and gloom as you would say. Losing to a Marcus Mariota-led team is not quite as bad as it would sound on the surface, because this is a really good football team outside of the quarterback position. But we'll talk about that here coming up on the show. John to Rogier. What are your thoughts on Zach being on the sidelines with Michael Penix Jr.? I think it's great. I think it's a position that I think Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, it was announced this week that he's going to be moving down to the sidelines in games. And I think it's good. I think it's largely the thing that they need to be doing. It's where he, I believe, feels most comfortable. It's what he had done throughout the course of his entire coaching career when he was at Los Angeles and when he came to Atlanta. That's only then was it that he moved up into the coaching box. And just with all the issues that this team is having right now, just in terms of communication and getting plays out and everything else, I think that's really going to be the best case scenario here for Zach Robinson and for this offense. And it's also just a stark reminder that this team is it's in dire straits right now. They need every single thing to go correctly. And this is one of those spots where you need communication to be as strong as possible. And if they feel that this is going to be the thing that kind of connects that with everybody, then I think that that's really the most important thing involved. But I think ultimately it's going to be good for this unit. I think it's good for a young quarterback to be close to his offensive coordinator, especially if you've been having these other issues just with communication and everything else. And I think it's going to be good for everybody just because you can see the guy who's making all the decisions, and you'll still have somebody who's experienced, who's up in the booth and can give them kind of that eye in the sky. But communication is more important than anything, just as it stands right now. 10 Cam 101. He says it's going to be a long bye week if we lose. Yes, it would be very brutal here for the staff, and especially if things don't improve. You need to look better. It sounds simple, but that's really all that matters. And even if you lose this game on Sunday, if you have to be competitive in this game. You have to be competitive. And if you are not, then you're going to have 2 weeks of lots of questions swirling around this team. And the local media just around this team, it's starting to turn on this team just a little bit. And I think a bad loss, an ugly loss, would only go to serve the negativity that is around this team. But look, if you can come out here and even if you lose this game on Sunday to Marcus Mariota and this Commanders team, it's not all doom and gloom. It's not the end of the world. But if you come out and get blown out, similar to what they did to the Raiders last week, we might be talking about something a little bit different. And I think then you might have to start having some difficult conversations about this team and about whether or not this team can much less make a playoff appearance, whether or not this coaching staff is really the right ones for the job. And I would rather avoid those conversations if possible, but an ugly loss potentially on Sunday would usher in some of those discussions. And we still have a long way, in my opinion, before any of those types of moves would be made. But that's when they generally start formulating in the early parts of a season, especially if you start the year 1-3. To just be kind of a tough pill to swallow for this team who's looking to make the playoffs the first time in 7 years. And that's just one of those realities. AJ comes through, says, good to see everyone, by the way. Always great stuff, Garrett. I really appreciate you, AJ. Lots of good stuff, lots of good questions from you, my friend. Always good stuff here from you as well. John Roberts says, do you think any player will be elevated? Yes, I do. Nathan Carter is on. He's going to be out this week. So I expect Carlos Washington's going to be one of those players who gets elevated. You might see a Keith Taylor or something like that from the secondary. It wouldn't surprise me all that much. But we also said the same thing last week, and D. Alford stepped in and was just the guy here for this team. And but ultimately, those are the spots that I'm going to be looking at. Carlos Washington is really the number one guy who I would expect to make that call up. I got Scott Kennedy coming in here. My man, Scott. What's up, my man? It says Dan Quinn took over what was considered a worse Commanders team the same time Raheem started with the Falcons. Losing this game would be that bad. Backup quarterback at home. Yes. Look, it would be ugly. It would be really ugly. Losing to a former head coach and a former quarterback that you cut would be ugly. It would be very, very ugly. I'm more talking broad. I'm not talking about like the storylines or the talking points and things like that. I'm just talking about the fact that this team dropped 41 points on the head of a pretty solid Raiders team last week. They have a lot of ways that they can hurt you, and it's a little bit more layered than just that. necessarily, but I do think that this is going to be a critical game for this Falcons team and a game that they should win. They should win this football game, just given the injury issues. But we'll come back. We're going to come back to your questions here. Thank you, everyone, for jumping in. We got, let's see, 75, 80 or so people or across all platforms joining on Facebook, joining on YouTube, and everywhere else, and on Twitter. And we're going to have a bunch more people joining on YouTube and Spotify after the fact. If you were joining us there, welcome. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like the podcast. Make sure to share it with your friends, and we'll kind of keep rolling through. But I'm going to come back to your questions here in just a little bit. I'm going to get through to some of my big questions that I have for this Falcons team heading into this game on Sunday. And I'm going to start here on the offensive line, because this is a solid offensive line, and I think a lot of people had a lot of questions for this unit, myself included, coming into the season after the injuries to Caleb McGarry and then the subsequent one to Storm Norton. But I think largely this unit has been pretty solid. They'll be tasked with slowing down some really good defenders here in this game. Bobby Wagner, of course, he's the ageless wonder. He's 35 years old. But I mean, he's going to be leading this team. But Daron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, those are two guys who the Falcons are going to have to keep an eye on, because this group has really helped, just in terms of pass rush, that this group is really elevated. They have, according to Next Gen Stats, they have a league high 50.4 pressure rate this season. 50.4. They're one of two teams that have pressured opposing quarterbacks on over half of their dropbacks. I mean, this is a group that wants to get after the passer. This is a group that does it very effectively too. And when they generate that pressure, they're allowing the second lowest completion percentage, 36.4. 36.4. And the third lowest dropback success rate, and that's 22.8%. And I mean, that's scary here for this Falcons team, who the offense is struggled. Let's just say it that way. That's probably the nicest way that we could possibly say it. I mean, they just got shut out by a not very good Panther defense last week. And it's especially bad when Michael Penix does get pressured, right? He has a league low minus 15.5 completion percentage over expected when he's pressured. And he's completing just 44% of his passes, which is the 11th lowest, 173 yards and one touchdown. And that one touchdown came on a screen pass to Bijan Robinson in week 1. And that accounted for maybe a third of 25% or so of the total yards that he has when he's under pressure. This offensive line is going to need to step up and have a really big day. They really need to have a really strong performance. And I think that's where it's going to start here for this team. And Michael Penix, I mean, you need somebody to step up around him. And I think that guy's got to be Bijan Robinson, because I'm losing a little bit of faith just in terms of, not faith in Michael Penix, the person, the player. I think he can still be a really good football player for this team and have a really good career. But as far as what this team needs right now, in this week, in this game, you need somebody who's going to step into the pocket, be strong in the pocket, and deliver passes effectively. And over the last 2 weeks, we haven't seen that for Michael Penix. You kind of saw it a little bit in week 2 against a really good Vikings defense. But you ran the ball for 215 yards in that game or whatever. I mean, that's really the reason you found success. And they took away the deep passing game, and he took what the defense gave him, and he made the simple completions. So it was fine. But he didn't do that against Carolina. And that's the reason you lost this game. That's the reason you didn't score a single point in this game. Now, maybe if Parker Romo connects on one of those 2 field goals, we could be having a slightly different conversation about this, but it happened, and you got to deal with that fact. And Michael Penix didn't help. Michael Penix actually, I would say, actively made it worse. It wasn't good. It just wasn't good. And you need to see him come back and kind of remedy some of those issues that he was having. It was just, a lot of it was mechanical. Some of it was he was missing passes. It's just little things. And it's the ebbs and flows of a young quarterback. These are things that come in time. And I still think he's going to be a really, really good professional player. And I still think he's got a really high ceiling. It's just, we got to deal with some of these ups and downs. It's just the nature of playing the quarterback position. And I just don't know if this coaching staff can afford it as of right now, but he needs to step up. And just in terms of other things that Michael Penix can do, I mean, he's got to start completing some of these deep passes. He's 1 of 17 on passes of 15 yards or more down the field. We talked about that a lot, and the lack of a explosive passing attack on Tuesday when we had our other podcast this week. You got to start connecting on some of those passes. You have to start completing some of those. 1 of 17 is just not going to cut it, especially when what you saw from this unit last year, just how effective they were down the stretch of the season. In those final 3 weeks of the season, he was the second best quarterback in terms of 15-yard passes. He was the second best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, and then on top of that, he wasn't putting the ball in harm's way. But you saw all of that change here so far this year. It has not been good, but things can get better quickly. It's just part of the ebbs and flows of being a young quarterback. So I'm interested to see how that happens, but how does he deal with the pressure? Because I think the Commanders are going to send some pressure, and I want to see the way he responds, because he did get down on himself for the first time, I would say, as a pro. It was pretty obvious, and I think, look, Raheem Morris commented it after the game. He said, basically, we need to rally around this guy and give him some support. And that's, I think, why you're bringing Zach Robinson down to the sideline. But either way, it's going to be something, and you need somebody to step up around him. And that person, I think, needs to be Bijan Robinson. He's the best player in the NFL, according to Raheem Morris, but you only gave him the ball 13 times.
My marathon isn't about time. It's about my 26 friends with intellectual disabilities I'm dedicating each mile to. I'm Joseph. I'm running my first Bank of America Chicago Marathon for Special Olympics Illinois to help give my friends a place to shine.
Join Bank of America in supporting Joseph's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportjoseph. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
He's got to touch the ball more. You have to give him the football, and you got to keep this defense off balance at least just a little bit, and kind of give some support here to your young quarterback. But then the wide receiver position, of course, you have the firing of Ike Hilliard this week. That's really taken the focal point of attention this week, just because the pressure's on right now. The pressure's on the staff. The pressure's on these players to really start getting some results. And the wide receiver hasn't caught a touchdown pass this season. That's unacceptable. The tight end hasn't caught a touchdown pass. Your leading receiver is your running back. That's just not good enough. And 50 of those yards came on one pass. That is just not good enough. It was a screen pass, too. It wasn't even a deep pass. It was just a screen, and Bijan Robinson made magic happen. So ultimately, this Falcons offense, I need to see some more from them. But then on top of that, my next big question here for this team is D. Alford. AJ Terrell is going to be out of this game again. And I remember talking to you people, talking about how D. Alford is going to be an important part of this team. And I didn't think it was going to be this way. And hopefully it doesn't have to be this way for much longer, just because having a guy like AJ Terrell is always going to make your defense better. He's one of the best cover corners in the NFL, but he's going to miss his second straight game. AJ Terrell is, and D. Alford's going to step up into his place. But he's been really good. I asked Raheem Morris about him and just his overall performance earlier this week, and he gave a glowing response. But then you look at the stats. The stats are good. The numbers are great for D. Alford so far. He's been targeted let me see. He's been targeted 6 times, but he's allowed just 1 reception for 9 yards, and he has a quarterback rating of 39.6 when he is targeted. He's been fantastic. And I've been very pleased with what he's been able to do. But it does help. It does help that this offense, the Commanders' offense, is not going to have Terry McLaurin or Jaden Daniels in this game. It's something that you need to see this defense step up and be effective, especially if this offense isn't able to get up off the ground here in this week. D. Alford's going to have a big role in that. But on top of that, you need to get some pressure in. You need to figure out a way to take out Deebo Samuel. Not injure him. I'm saying take him out of the game somehow, and just sort of corral him. But Zach Ertz is also a guy who's going to come out here and burn you. Deebo's not necessarily a guy that I think that D. Alford would be matched with. I think he's going to end up matching up on a guy like Luke McCaffrey or something like that. I think D should do pretty well in that regard. Deebo Samuel, I think, is going to be more of a Billy Bowman type assignment. So this is going to be a fascinating matchup between those two. Billy Bowman is a good player. Billy Bowman has had his first interception. He almost had his second interception. And I mean, he's been a really good rookie, but he's still a rookie. And Deebo Samuel is somebody who's going to be all over the field. And with the versatility that he provides this offense, he's going to be a very important person to slow down. You're going to have to corral him in this game. But that's just the biggest thing for this defense is you got to figure out where Deebo Samuel is at all times. I think he's done a pretty good job here so far. But ultimately, this is a spot where you need to figure out where this star wide receiver is at all times and make sure that you have him corralled. But Marcus Mariota, I mean, he's the guy. He's leading this team. He had a really good week last week. He's actually been very good for this Commanders team so far since taking over for Jaden Daniels. I think it was 9 quarters now we've seen Marcus Mariota. They had a 400-yard performance against the Raiders. They dropped 41 points on their head. 34 points of that came from the offense. Mariota's completing 77% of his passes for 573 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he's running the ball well, which we know he can do. He's got 130 yards on the ground. I mean, he looks kind of like that guy that they wanted to draft second overall. You know, I mean, he's never going to get quite to that level, but I mean, ultimately, he is a backup quarterback. He's going to show flashes. There's a reason he's still in this league and still getting a contract. But the thing is, the Falcons need to take advantage of some of those mistakes, and you do that by getting pressure on him. That's something that the Raiders didn't do a super good job of, if I'm remembering correctly. Just having just watched the game, I didn't come through and actually dig deep into the numbers of that one, but it's something the Falcons have done a much better job in 2025 of, is getting pressure on the quarterback and making them make mistakes, which Marcus Mariota has shown that he can do that. I mean, going back to his time here in Atlanta, he will give the football to the other team. He was 5-8 in his 13 starts here in Atlanta, but he had 9 interceptions in those 13 games. He doesn't really give you a prolific passing attack necessarily. I think he topped 200 yards twice as a starter here in Atlanta, but I mean, he's already off to a better start up there in Washington, but he's got some good weapons up there, and excuse me, but it's all going to come back to their ability to stop the run, for the Falcons. This group, Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, Ja'Cory Grosky-Merritt, these are guys who they want to turn around and they want to give the ball to these 3 guys. That, or they want to use this RPO with Marcus Mariota, which he can do that very effectively. They ran for 143 yards last week, and that was one of the reasons the Falcons lost to Carolina, is they could not get a hold of the pass, the running game. They go off for 140 yards in that game, and that's a really important thing. You got to corral these guys. Baker Mayfield showed that he can really hurt this group if you run, if you go after him, and he's able to escape from the pocket. Baker Mayfield really hurt this team. I mean, JJ McCarthy didn't really do much of that, but that's also because the Falcons were living in his backfield. And then Bryce Young is not somebody who's necessarily going to do that quite to that level, but Marcus is somebody a little bit closer to that mold of Baker Mayfield, and he will burn you. And this is important because if you lose first and second down, you're then getting into situations where your pass rush can't thrive. Your pass rush can't get after him, and your pass rush can't force him into passing situations and really get into the backfield and cause some problems. That's really going to be an important part of this. You have to win the early downs, and that starts and ends with corralling this rushing attack. And that's where Deebo Samuel also factors into that as well. I am taking your questions. My name is Garrett Chapman. This is the Falcons Podcast. Running through, kind of previewing some of this game and some of the stuff that we can expect for the Week 4 matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and the Washington Commanders at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. 1:00 game. Very excited for this one. It's going to be a very important game here for the Falcons, just trying to get up off the mat after just a debilitating 30-point drubbing by the Carolina Panthers that absolutely nobody saw coming. And then, like Scott mentioned, I mean, it's you got your former quarterback, you got a former coach coming here to town, and this is a team who's beaten you 4 years in a row. They've played 21, 22, 23, and 24, and all 4 of those games have been one-score games, but all 4 of those have favored the Washington Commanders. So it's going to be very, very important for the Falcons to come out here with a win, not just because you want to beat your former coach and you don't want to, and more importantly, you don't want to lose to Marcus Mariota. It's just you need to get up off the mat right now. It's a team looking to try and snap a brutal stretch of games, of seasons where you can't get a winning record and you can't make the playoffs. And starting the season 1-3 is going to be about as dreadful a start as you could have possibly imagined here. It gets a little easier after the bye week, but I mean, that's only after you play the Bills and the 49ers. That's when you get into the kind of the underbelly of the schedule. But the Falcons can absolutely lose this season before they get to that. And then at that point, who knows? Who really knows? Especially if you're losing 30 points to teams like the Washington Commanders. Trenton dropped in here and gave me $5. Appreciate you, my man. If anybody drops in a starred comment or a comment just like this, I will go right to it. If you have a comment, if you have a question, I will always hit you first. So Trenton, my man, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much through $5 our way. Just for D. Alford, just because. Yes, D. Alford. I've been pounding the table. I didn't pound the table for this guy. I was excited about D. Alford. I said he'd been playing well throughout the course of the summer, and people kind of came after me a little bit here on this podcast. And yeah, it's because he left a little bit to be desired at times. Let's put it that way. Last season, but it's a new year. It's a new season. And so far, so good for D. Alford. He's playing at a really high level. But thank you, Trenton. I really appreciate it. Always good to come back to some positive things that we can kind of get through. Really appreciate that one, my man. If you have any questions, though, if you have anything that you want to drop in here, anything that you want to talk about, just kind of as we preview this Falcons matchup at the Commanders on Sunday, make sure to drop it in here. Let's see. 10_Cam_01 on YouTube. He says, is it the predictability or execution the problem? So is predictability or execution the problem? I think it's absolutely both. I asked both Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson just during press conferences this week about their thoughts on the critiques of being predictable. I was not blown away by either one of the responses. I'd say Raheem got a little irritable by the question. I think is probably the safe way to say. I don't think he appreciated the question, but I felt like it was an appropriate question. It was a fair question. It's something that we've seen and heard now for a couple of weeks just about the predictability, and you didn't score any points against the Carolina Panthers, and that needs to be accounted for, needs to be answered. But what was worrying is that they answered it in different ways. What was concerning is the fact that I heard different things from different coaches publicly. And it is just not a very good situation here in Atlanta. But ultimately, if you have guys like Bijan Robinson catching the football like he didn't do against I want to say it was either the Vikings game, or I think it was the Vikings game where I think Bijan Robinson drops a football on second down. Can't do that. You get guys who Michael Penix overthrows Darnell Mooney. You just can't do that. I mean, you've had opportunities to score, and some of these plays I think we would be talking about a little bit differently if execution is better. You hit your targets, you catch the passes, and you hit your block. I think we'd be talking about things just a little bit differently, but also there is a level of predictability. We talked about this a lot on Tuesday, just in general. And it's the fact that you're lining up in pistol but your run play is you're running it out of the pistol 70% of the time. And then it's when you line up in shotgun, you're doing it, whatever. It's everything basically is happening. The numbers are not really lining up. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and I don't want to misquote them. So I'm not going to quote them, but it's one of those spots where you kind of these teams line up and basically what they're going to run. You have a tight end who's going to shift across the formation. That's the direction that the Falcons are going to be running. And there's no misdirection. There's nothing on the other side. There's nothing that kind of keeps this team off on the defense is honest. And you need that little bit of misdirection. It doesn't matter who you are in the NFL. Even the Philadelphia Eagles need to have some level of misdirection. Even they are probably the only team that can just line up on a play and say, I'm going to beat you. Every other team in the NFL, it doesn't matter how good or bad they are, still needs to have some level of misdirection, because there's a lot more parity in this league than, it's just how it is. There's parity all over this league, and you need to have some level of misdirection to kind of give yourself at least some little bit of advantage. And I don't think the Falcons are doing a very good job of that. So, Cam, to answer your question, both. It is both, and I think it just depends on the play. Unfortunately, I don't think that the execution's been good enough to mask some of the problems in play calling, and I don't think the play calling's certainly been good enough to mask some of the execution problems. So it's absolutely both of these things, and if they can get one of them better against the Commanders, I think they'll give themselves a good chance to win this game. Ninth Gutta says, what do you think about the play calling? So I've been largely holding my tongue on a lot of it just until this week. You can't really hold your tongue after just the debacle that we saw in Carolina. But ultimately, I mean, the play calling has got to be better. It's got to be better. And I think I mentioned this when I was answering Cam's question just a moment ago. It helps when you have a rushing attack that's going off for 200 yards. It's easy to mask some of the problems that are going on in this passing attack when that is happening. When you're not running for 200 yards, that's when you start seeing a lot more of these problems flare up, right? And that's maybe it's as simple as just turning around and handing the ball off. But teams are going to try and take that away. At some point, this passing attack needs to figure itself out. The rushing attack struggled in week 1, but since it's been fine. A lot of that's just Bijan Robinson just being Bijan Robinson. He's that good. You got to give him more touches. And Michael Penix has to be better. That's really what it comes down to. And you're putting a lot of pressure on a guy who's made 6 starts. I opened the show with this. My concern at the quarterback position is growing. And it's not that I think Michael Penix is a bad player. It's not that I think he's not the right guy for the job. It's just he's young. He's young. And young quarterbacks make mistakes. Young quarterbacks, they can get exposed. And through the last 2 weeks, Michael Penix has been exposed. And the Falcons haven't had a plan B for it. Darnell Mooney has been a non-factor in this game, or in any of these games. Drake London's been a non-factor. Kyle Pitts has been fine. I actually say Kyle Pitts has had a pretty good season so far. But he's not an impact player down the field. He's a dump-off option. Bijan Robinson, he's your leading receiver, but he's a dump-off option. All of Michael Penix's success is coming at or around the line of scrimmage. Most of his completions this season are under 5 yards. I'll say it again. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And I don't know if it's all on him or if it's all on Zach Robinson. It's probably somewhere in between. But mechanically, he's missing passes. And formationally, I don't think that you're getting a lot of separation from your wide receivers. So I think it's a lot of both. And both have to be better. All right, Tomlin Lieutenant over there on YouTube says still early in the season, but when does buyer's remorse hit it with the day 1 draft day move up? Feels like if the 26th pick is top 12, it's a huge hit. I'm misunderstanding this. I feel like if the 26th pick. Okay, so I would say ultimately if it's way too early to potentially say anything like that. And even if it ends up being like a 15, 16, 17, 18 pick or something like that, if James Pierce is the guy, then I think it's fine. All you did was move up a year and take a really good player that you wanted to be in your franchise. The Falcons were sold on James Pierce. I'm convinced that James Pierce was going to be the pick at 15 had Jalen Walker not dropped. It's just I don't think the Falcons expected to have an opportunity to get Jalen Walker. And when he fell into their laps, okay, great. We'll take this guy. And then James kept dropping. And said, oh, all right, well, we need to go make this happen. And I think the first round pick happens because I don't think they were expecting to make the move. It's just they reacted on draft day and they went out and got their guy. That's the biggest thing. So ultimately, buyer's remorse, we're 3 weeks into the season. So a lot of my critiques here, my criticisms of Michael Penix, we're 3 weeks into the season. Things can change quickly. It's just the onus is on this front office to get results. That's why they go make this move. And I think the defense is, the defense has been very good. Defense has looked fantastic through 3 weeks. Pressure rates are way up. James Pierce has a sack. Jalen Walker has sacks. You have guys making an impact. And James Pierce, if he is a Falcon for the next decade, no one gives a damn about what you traded to go get him. If he is the guy, who cares? So Tomlin, to answer your question, I don't really care, right? Not right now, at least. If the Falcons bottom out and it turns into a top 5 pick or something like that, then it's going to be very bad. But I don't think that the Falcons are in dire straits quite to that level yet. I don't think they will at any point be a top 5 pick or anything like that. I don't think they're a top 10 pick type team. This team is good enough. They're talented enough that they're going to win enough football games. And look, if the offense continues to struggle in the ways that it is, you got a veteran quarterback on the bench who's won a lot of football games and thrown for a lot of yards and scored a lot of touchdowns. They're not going to let it get to the situation where they're bottoming out to the level of being a 6-7 win team. That's just not acceptable at this point, and they're going to pull it. If it's starting to look that way with Michael Penix, they're going to pull the trigger. They're adamant that they're not. They're adamant that Michael Penix is the starter, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. That's your guy. You invested in him, and you've put everything that you have into him. But ultimately, got to get to a level that you're winning games. And that's really the biggest thing. And quick thing, Scott Kennedy wants to come out and shout out our new members, Caleb G and Chris Tyler. Welcome to the family, man. Guys, really excited to get you in here. So Caleb G and Chris Tyler, shout out to you guys. All right. I see some other folks jumping in here. We got Zach Hubbard. It says, what's your confidence level that Zach Robinson can right the ship for the offense? If they would play like the last 3 games of last season, I think we would be very good. And just again, everybody, if you drop into a super chat, I will come to your questions right away. No questions asked. I'm going to jump right into them. But anybody else who just want to drop a comment, I'll get to those just as they come in, and I'll try to get to as many of those as I can. But if you want to drop in a super chat, always going to jump in here. So thank you for the question, Zach Hubbard. My confidence in Zach Robinson, it's waning. Let's just put it that way. I have not been very impressed with what I've seen from him so far this season. But this is also something that we saw from him last year. He gets very married to just the idea of his game plan. And you don't see a lot of variation from the game plan in games, right? You saw that a lot against the Steelers last year. And that's really where this offense bottomed out last year, was in that first week. You saw him adapt and improve as the season went on. And I think he really, as far as like finding a wrinkle in the offense and stuff like that, I think Michael Penix was the wrinkle. I think that he kind of got a pass last year because Kirk Cousins looked so bad and Kirk Cousins struggled as much as he did. But I think he shares a little bit of that blame. He is the play caller. He is the guy who's making all the decisions and doing everything in that regard. So until he shows me something different, my confidence isn't going to be all that high. I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed. When you run the ball well, great. I think that this team is at its best when it's running the ball well. But if that's the case, you need to turn around and give the ball to your running backs. If you want to be a running football team and go for 200 yards in a game and dictate terms that way, then do that. Turn around and give those guys the ball. Give Tyler Algier more than one attempt. And I don't want to hear anything about games flow and game situations and anything else like that when it's 10-0 at halftime. It's 10-0. We're not talking about this game being a 3-4 score game at halftime. So, I'm not super confident in where this offense is right now. I'm very displeased with just the performance in general. And I think a lot of it falls on the plate of Zach Robinson. He's going to get blamed for a lot of this. But it's also because you're putting a lot on a young quarterback, and it was risky. It was a risky proposition when they first brought it up. It's a risky proposition now, and it'll continue to be one of those risky propositions. But if things get better, and I think they can with Michael Penix, he's a really talented player, and he can still do a lot of crazy things on a field, and he can throw the ball better than anybody I've seen in person. The guy's got a killer arm, but it doesn't matter how hard you can throw the ball if you can't hit your targets. And you've seen him struggle with some accuracy issues, and Zach Robinson hasn't adjusted. And you need to see that from him coming here over the next couple of weeks. Otherwise, there's a chance that it's going to be somebody else who's going to make those adjustments for him. Trenton comes back in here, another super chat. Like I said, if you got a super chat, drop it in here, and I will always jump to your questions first. Trenton, thank you so much, my man. MP9, Michael Penix is seeing defensive looks for the first time, literally. And that's one of those other things. We talked about this in weeks 1 and 2 specifically. He faced 2 of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL in the first 2 weeks of the season. That was tough. It was tough. He looked really good week 1 against the Commanders. He looks like he's in control week 2. He's in a spot where, he was getting some exotic pressures and some exotic looks there in the second week of the season against the Vikings. But I think he largely played well, and he took what the defense gave him. But
wish you could become a morning person? The type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by The Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
It all came crashing down last week. It all came crashing down. And I just want to see how he responds. I think he's mentally strong. I think he's mentally very confident in himself. And I think he's going to maintain some of that confidence coming into this week. And I'm just fascinated to see how he responds. I'm fascinated to see what he looks like because I'm still a big fan of his. I'm still a big believer in him. I'm just shaken as far as the early success of the offense. And it just makes me a little worried against coming into a game where you have a pass rush with this Commanders team, and they like to get after the passer. They're really effective at getting after the passer. And when he gets pressured, it's not good. It's definitely not good. We're going to keep on rolling through here. Send it Fit 542 on YouTube says, discussions, they lose. Raheem is gone before the end of the bye week. No, I don't think that that's going to be the case. Barring a crazy lopsided loss. Like if this team comes out and loses in definitive fashion and they look bad in the process of doing it, then yeah, maybe there's a chance that happens. Like if they come out and they lose badly at home to the Commanders the week after getting blanked by the Panthers, then you have to have that conversation. That's going to be something that absolutely enters into the realm of discussion. Jeff Ulbrich will be an interim head coach for the second year in a row. If they simply lose the game and say they fall, 21-17 or something, 24-21, 24-17, are you really going to fire him after that? I'm not. No. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, because you would have to make the question, you have to answer the question and say that firing him would definitively make this team better. Would it? I don't think it would. Not yet. I mean, it could down the stretch, depending on some of these other results that we see over the next couple of weeks. No, I don't think so. But if you lose badly, then I mean that has to be a discussion. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that that's really the situation that we find ourselves in. I just think it's the ebbs and flows of a season because this team very easily could be 2-1 right now. They were the better team in week 1, and if Younghoe Koo comes out and makes a kick, a makeable kick, you're going into overtime, and your offense, who just driven down the field and scored, and was turning around and driving again, maybe they come out and do it. Maybe they come and get a win in that game. Who knows? But this team very easily could be 2-1. And we'd be having a different conversation. 10 Cam to 01. Lots of good questions here from Cam here. So I don't think we're going to regret the trade up unless there's a player that looks better than Pierce in the next draft around that pick. Sure. I mean, but I can't predict that. I'm just reacting based off of whether or not I think I have buyer's remorse right now for the Falcons. I don't, because James Pierce looks like he has the potential to be one of the best defenders in this team for the next couple of years. And if you have that guy, great. But outside of that, you're just projecting. And we have no idea what those guys are going to be just as pros or anything else. But as from what we have seen from James Pierce, the guy looks the part. He's really stinking good, right? He's really good. And if he turns into a double-digit sack guy, I don't care. I really don't care. Because you're going to find good players throughout the draft. And now the onus is on Terry Fontenot to hit on some of those mid-round picks. Got another starred comment. I'm going to come straight to it. It's my man Trenton again. Thank you so much, Trenton. I appreciate you, bud. Not shocked from 9. He still does what his pre-draft report says. These aren't new issues, just needs more time to grow. Zach isn't helping. My thoughts exactly, Trenton. I mean, these are my thoughts exactly. A lot of these things are things that we heard about it just during the pre-draft process. When he was a young quarterback coming up through the ranks on this team, you talked about some of the things that he needed to fix. He had 58% completion percentage at the end of last year. I felt like some of that was blown a little bit out of proportion by the end of last season, but lo and behold, he's sitting at a 58% completion percentage now. So maybe it wasn't quite as blown out of proportion as we previously thought. But I mean, this is a guy who I think has all the arm talent in the world. I think he's mentally tough. I think he's a gunslinger who can get the ball out and do things really effectively. And he's going to put his guys in good position. But you just haven't seen it in the last 2 weeks. I'm not bailing on Michael Penix right now. I'm very far from doing that. I don't think the Falcons should do it at all, because he's going to be the starting quarterback in this franchise, at least for the next 2 years, right? And if he's not, something went really wrong, right? Something went really wrong, because Kirk Cousins isn't going to be here next year. I firmly believe that fact, just because you have the option to get out from underneath that contract here soon. But unless things have bottomed out so badly that you have to make a move, then why would you? Unless it's just a coaching staff who's trying to save their job. But the onus is on him now. He's got to show some improvement. He's got to get mechanically better. He's got to be better in the pocket. And he's got to trust some of his reads. Because by my eyes, right, from my eyes, it looks like he has opportunities down the field. And he's just not taking them. You know, I saw on social media lots of things trending with like a Kyle Pitts throw or a seam route that was potentially open or whatever. I don't put much stock into that necessarily. I don't think that that's necessarily what I'm referring to, but it's like you had an opportunity on the pick six. Ray McLeod is wide open. And it looks to me like Michael Penix looked at him, chose not to throw the ball, and then checked down. And you have a corner who's basically, I mean, he's hitting up on it. He's already making a break on it before Michael Penix turns and looks at his guy. He knew it was coming, and that's not good. And that tells me it's just a quarterback who's kind of, he's a little shaken. He's just a little shaken. But that doesn't mean that he's lost. It just means that maybe the bye week coming in week 5 is going to be very good. Speaking of a Washington, anyone know when Casey Washington is back? So he actually he out of concussion protocol. Another positive thing. Thank you, AJ, for bringing this up. Casey Washington passed through concussion protocol on Thursday officially. He cleared it, and he's off the injury report, and he's going to be playing on Sunday. So that is a good development. I think that's somebody who had the potential to kind of jump in here and help Michael Penix. I think that could potentially be a good thing for him. He was his running mate just on the practice squad last year, and I think having somebody like that could potentially jump in here, and I think that's going to be good because this team's kind of banged up on special teams. So having a Casey Washington who maybe can step into that role as well, we'll see. I'm not going to talk a little bit too deep on that one, but as far as kind of getting Michael Penix into a groove, maybe Casey Washington can help a little bit with that. But he is the 4th wide receiver on this team. He's not exactly going to be getting a ton of targets, but maybe we'll see. But it's still good news. I'm still excited to get him back out on the field. Johnson Rozier comes out and says the offense is having an execution problem. The offense looked way better last year under the same scheme. It depends on what part of the year you're talking about here, Johnson, because beginning parts of the year, the first 9 weeks of the season, you're exactly right outside of week 1. So really 8 of the first 9 weeks of the season, the offense looked really good. Yeah, I mean, look, they had strong performances against the Eagles, against the Chiefs. I think they looked great against the Buccaneers twice in that span. You had a great game against the Cowboys. You looked really good. You looked great. Then it went off a cliff after that Saints game. Fell off a cliff. And you look great the final 3 weeks of the season. But I think the wrinkle that was added was Michael Penix. He was giving you something, a downfield passing attack that you just didn't have with Kirk Cousins, especially after that injury that he had in that Saints game. So, yeah, same scheme, different quarterback. And it just depends. It was this offense was pretty bad at times last year. It's very bad at times. And I think a lot of that got blamed on Kirk Cousins and his health. But looking back on it, maybe Zach Robinson had a little bit more to do with that than we previously thought. Got another here starred conversation. Trenton wants to come back and say on the misses, I like what 9 is seeing. He's good. Again, I agree. I think Michael Penix is still the guy. Michael Penix is still the guy who I have firm belief in him. I really do. I think he is going to get his things figured out. I think he's going to come back stronger, and I think he's going to be a better football player and a better pro because he's gone through these struggles. Every single pro does it. I don't care who you are. Tom Brady went through this stuff. Peyton Manning goes through this stuff. Patrick Mahomes is probably the only example of somebody who didn't, but he also sat the bench his entire first season. And I mean, he's also a unicorn. I mean, Jaden Daniels is kind of going through that right now. Of course, he's been dealing with some injuries, but he started slow to the season. Lest we forget. Drake May looked bad at times last year. Caleb Williams has looked bad at times. Dak Prescott, doesn't matter who it is. Jalen Hurts, young quarterbacks, when they come into the league, they have a period where defenses figure them out. How do they respond? The great ones find a way. And I think that Michael Penix has the potential to be a great one. We just need to see it. And I think it's going to come. We got another super chat here. And again, if you have a super chat, you want to drop it in here. Thank you to Zach. Thank you to Trenton. Thank you for dropping them in. Can ask Raheem why he never elects to get the ball at halftime. I really don't understand this. Actually, I'm not sure. That's a great question. I mean, some of these, I know that they've lost the toss a few times this year. I think they've actually lost 2 out of 3 of the tosses. And I don't know the sample size. So Zach, unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for you. I will go figure it out, and I will give you an answer next week on Tuesday. Because I actually don't know the answer to this, and I apologize, but I appreciate the super chat, and I appreciate the support, and I appreciate you listening and following as always. This is the Falcons Podcast with your host, Garrett Chapman. We do this generally every Tuesday and Thursday. I had a family obligation yesterday that I had to take care of, so we're doing it on a Friday afternoon and talking all things Atlanta Falcons. We got a lot of stuff that we're getting into and a lot of stuff in here. Big thank you to Zach and big thank you to Trenton for the super chats and jumping in here. I really do appreciate you guys. And if you guys have super chats and you guys want to drop them in, I'm more than happy to jump in. And Trenton, speaking of which, drops in one. Same scheme. Remember, LA ate it up last year. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about the LA Chargers or what are we referring to with this? Trenton. Not 100% sure. It is the same scheme. It is the same scheme that you ran last year with Zach Robinson. It's the same offensive coordinator. It's virtually the exact same offense skill-wise. The only difference really is Ryan Newsel under center, who started 7-8 games for you last year, whatever it was, and Michael Penix, who started 3 games for you. So ultimately, yes, it's the same thing. And you had some results that were good, and you had some results that were bad last year. And right now you're going through a rough period, and it's on Zach Robinson and it's on Michael Penix to kind of get those things figured out. We'll keep on rolling through. If you have any other questions, if you got anything else, Trenton, thank you, says anything to help at Scott. This is a great channel. This is my 2nd season following. Trenton, I really appreciate you, buddy. iTumblr is the easy answer to this video. No. Okay. I guess you're responding to the prompt in the video. It says, can the Falcons get right against the Commanders? iTumblr says no. I say they absolutely could, but the proof is in the pudding, and you need to show it. You're facing a backup quarterback in Marcus Mariota. And if you're just joining us, look, I rolled through a lot of my questions that I have for this Falcons team heading into this week. But the last big one is just the kicking situation. Is it figured out? You brought in Ben Sauls after cutting Younghoe Koo and signing Parker Romo, and it's been bad. It's been ugly, but hopefully it gets figured out. And that's kind of the situation you find yourself in. Parker Romo goes 5 for 5 in Minnesota, and it looks like he's got the job locked up after winning the kicking competition from Younghoe Koo, and then he officially seals the deal in the week of practice last week. He gets signed to the actual contract, and then he poops the bed. It's really that simple. He was bad. And I think Parker Romo missing the first kick was a gut punch. Missing the second kick was just a death blow. And I don't think that this team responded well. This team kind of just fell off a cliff after that. And I think mentally they were just shocked, right? They were shell shocked, and they didn't respond. They're bringing Ben Sauls from Pittsburgh. He was signed up with the practice, not the practice squad. He was on a training camp body there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was a Pittsburgh Panther, got a great leg. He was an all ACC player, and look, he does a good job. And I think he's good competition here for him. It's a young guy, and those kinds of players are either really good or they're really bad. as rookies. And I think Ben Saul's, he's pretty good conversion rates. He's right about 87%, but he's got a cannon of a leg. He made a 58-yard kick in college, which tied a school record. So I think ultimately he can be a pretty good option. Trenton comes back with another super chat, my man. Thank you, Trenton. I wanted to see JPJ against Daniels and RPO. I would have loved that. I'd rather see James Pierce against Marcus Mariota just because I think that the Falcons are going to have a better chance to beat the Commanders with Marcus Mariota as the starting quarterback. It's just how I feel about it. But no, thank you for the chat there, Trenton. I think James Pierce is going to be a stud. James Pierce is a really good player. He's got a breakout game coming too. I just feel that. I feel it in my bones that there is a breakout coming where he's going to come out and get 2 or 3 sacks here. Keep on rolling through. August 809 comes in and says, if they lose this and Penix plays poorly, Cousins will start after bye against Buffalo. That would be bold. I think that's not outside of the realm of possibility. It just all comes back to, I think they would open a competition potentially. If Penix comes out and he plays very poorly, right? And if he comes out and just has a stinker like he did last week, I think you have to have the conversation. I don't think ultimately it does happen. At least I hope it doesn't happen. That's kind of where I find myself in. But I think he's still in a really good spot as the starter. The staff has faith in him. His players, his teammates have faith in him. You've seen what he's physically capable of doing when he's at his best. It's just he's a young quarterback, and he's got to be allowed to have his down moments and kind of given the opportunity to rebound from them. We just haven't seen him have bad moments. You know, when he comes in and he was implemented as the starter, and it was just all good, really. I mean, his first performance, I guess you could say, was technically a career low or whatever. You didn't have to do anything. That was a game where you jumped on a Giants team that had quit on its season already. All you had to do was turn around and hand the ball off, and you won that game with 34-7. You didn't have to do anything. But then in week 17, you this same Commanders team, he goes down to the wire and gives you the best chance to win, and he leads a game-tying drive to get it to overtime and just isn't given an opportunity in overtime, a rule that they've since changed. Does the exact same thing in week 18 against the Panthers. Doesn't get the ball back, and the Falcons never get a chance on offense. But you see some of the highs, but he's got to be afforded to get through some of the tough times that are going to hit every single player in this league. It is what it is. Smooth C78 says, we better win. No more excuses. No excuses at all. Absolutely not. Keep on rolling through. T Green is back. What's up, man? Welcome back in. I know you're a Panthers fan, and I know you're very excited to support a Falcons podcast, and I'm thrilled to have you back in here. Absolutely supporting Falcons podcasts everywhere. So T Green, thank you for joining us. Trenton comes through, says, hey Chap, I was looking forward to seeing Pierce versus Daniel in RPO situations. Oh, I see you dropped in here. So this is similar to your super chat. This is one of the good reasons why you do a super chat, because Trenton, he asked the question. I didn't see it. He drops a super chat. I see it right away, and I jumped right into it, and I was able to answer it straight away. So Trenton, I did get to that question. Thank you for dropping it in. Pam Jackson has a question. Who will be the kicker on Sunday? It's going to be Parker Roma. Raheem Morris confirmed that earlier today. So we'll see what he can do. This is going to be his redemption game. And if he's going to get an opportunity to kick, I firmly believe he's going to have an opportunity. But you got to make it. You got to connect. And if he doesn't, then he's quickly going to be relieved of duties, because this team does not have the ability, to wait on a kicker to figure out how to make kicks. You got to have a guy who's going to make kicks. And if he doesn't make them, then sorry, you got to move on. They owe him nothing. You brought in Ben Sauls for a reason. And if he's not the guy, then you find somebody else who can make kicks. As simple as that. That's all it comes down to. Keep on rolling through. Thank you for everybody. So I've got almost 200 plus people who've jumped into this podcast at various points in the show. Thank you so much. My name is Garrett Chapman. This is the Falcons Podcast. We do this every single Tuesday and on Thursdays at 6:00. I see a bunch of people have jumped in here. I'm starting to see some regulars, and I'm really excited about that fact. So building a little community here is something I really love. But generally speaking, this is going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're doing it on a Friday just for some fun, just so I can chat with you folks and kind of get a little bit just of your reactions coming through here. Gabriel Rogers says they gave opposite answers, LMAO. Yeah, I asked the question, and I was safe to say I was a little displeased with the answer that I received, just in general, because they were different. We heard different things from Zach. We heard a different thing from Raheem. I'm sure they'll come back and say something. They'll get on the same page, but you need to see them on the same page, and they need to be on the same page moving forward. But ultimately, results speak louder than anything. You got to come out and win. All right, so I got some time for a handful of questions, but Pam Jackson, we should not depend on field goals. We need to score points, throw down the field. Good point. I think that would be very nice. I think that's what the strength of this offense was supposed to be. And Zach Robinson talked a lot about this last week. Said basically he's taking what the defenses are giving him. And then I asked him this week, at what point can you start dictating terms? And he says, well, I feel like we are dictating terms. And I'm like, well, that's different than what you said last week. Because he says you're responding. You're not dictating. And look, if they're going to play back, you need to run the ball. And you need to you need to just dominate the rushing attack. Simple as that. You didn't do it against Carolina, and I think you could have done a better job. But you have a great point. You shouldn't be leaning on a kicker to get you your points. You need to turn around and get yourself a good opportunity to score. And you got to be better in the red zone. And that's a place that we haven't even talked about this week because the Falcons didn't get to the red zone last week. They didn't do it one time, not once. Got to be better. All right. Big thank you to everybody who's jumped in here. Thank you to all of the super chats. Thank you to Zach. Thank you to Trenton. Thank you to Scott, who was in here joining us for a little bit. Lots of great questions for you. I'm not going to give you a prediction for this game, not on this podcast before I see you. But I'm not going to give a score prediction. I did a preseason prediction. I think the Falcons can absolutely win this game. But we'll come out and do now I'm thinking about it. No, I'll give a prediction. I generally don't like giving predictions. I think it's not necessarily the best thing to do, but I do think that the Falcons can come out and win this game. I think they'll win this game. I really do. And I think that the ebbs and flows of this franchise are just going to continue. Initially I wasn't going to give you one, but now I've backtracked immediately. You asked the question, so I'm going to give you an answer. And that's what I've told you. When we started this podcast, I said, if you ask the question, if it's a fair question, then I'm going to answer it. So I answered. So I do think the Falcons are going to win this game. I just think that Marcus Mariota is not a guy who's going to give you a consistent performance. And I think it's going to flare up in this game. And that's really what it comes back to. Michael Penix, I think, isn't going to be leaned on. I think they're instead going to run the ball really effectively. I think they're going to turn around and hand the ball off a bunch. And I think they're going to try and take some pressure off that way. Hope that answers your question. I hope that's something good, but Falcons need some good news. Let's just be very clear about that fact. But however it comes, however a win can potentially happen, they will be better off for it. But remember, Scott and Nick, they're going to be live 8:30 on Monday, and they'll be back on Wednesday as well. But if there's content you want to see, drop it in the comments, and we'll try to get to it as much as possible. We'll be back on Tuesday evening, 6 o'clock. So make sure to hit that like or subscribe button. Make sure to set your reminders. Set a little buzzer or whatever. Jump in here. And we'll have some fun talking a little NFL Falcons, hopefully on a Victory Tuesday. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Give me a follow at GChapATL on Twitter. Check out all the content that we have coming out. I send out a lot of stuff on that, but you can also head over to si.com/NFL/Falcons and get your fix there too. My name is Garrett Chapman for Falcons on SI. I'll see you all very soon. But until next time, go Falcons.